Welcome to the podcast from Monastereo. This is our third podcast, and this time I am with Monika, my collaborator, and
Finally.
finally, exactly from South Africa. I'm based in Germany. So, Monasterio, I'm just going to give a quick introduction again what this podcast is about. So, we felt it's important to share insights from our meditation cushion and bring them into the messy, beautiful reality of life. So, we're two people, and both of us are walking on a spiritual path. We're not in a monastery, but we're in the middle of work, relationships, our doubts, joy, exhaustion, and longing. And Monika and I kind of termed Monasterio because we like this idea of a mystic without a monastery. And the idea is that we kind of go through this calling to depth, to contemplation, and we want to examine our lives. And we don't necessarily get the opportunity to go away into a monastery and be silent all the time. How do you see this, Monika?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think it's kind of where life has taken us. I think if someone gave us a choice, we would. um, but yeah, it definitely is that. And I think our path and our mission, it seems at the moment, is to bring those sort of realizations and experiences to real life, as we're saying, like, and to the day-to-day lives.
Mm. Yeah, because it requires like a willingness and a quality of attention to really sit down and have a spiritual life. That's not
Yes.
necessarily based on one religion, and that can draw on the wisdom of different insights like Buddhism, but also contemplation in Christianity, Sufism. There are going to be subjects we don't have any experience on because we are not experts. We really want to let you know that we're coming from a place of our own experience and our own practice. So, in a way, today we managed to be live from South Africa and Germany. And we,
Yoo-hoo! Two different seasons as well.
yeah, I'm in the summer sweating, and Monika is going into the winter.
Yes.
And just to hone in, so what we want to do here is we're going to share about questions that we kind of raise. We're going to do personal stories, lived experience, and we reflect from our own work and our own paths. And I find each episode is meant to bring something to you that is of benefit, that you feel like you can go into your life and think about it, reflect and see, is there any truth for you about this? And we're doing the subject of, what is it?
Joy!
Yes. We want to look at joy today from different perspectives. And some of us find it easy to kind of lean into this feeling of joy, and others find it very, I don't know, have no access to it. But remind me, Monika, how did we actually come to talk about this in our episode today?
Yeah, Sarah, I think the root of it sort of came from a message that was sent on a little group that we have, that one of the women was sharing about joy and like this illusion of, or elusiveness, I think that's the word, of joy. And it just opened up this topic for all of us, because we all seem to have shared a similar feeling of, well, where is the joy? Like, what is joy? And like, I think, we touched on topics of what we thought perhaps joy looks like and what it felt like back in the days, Sarah. Do you
Yeah,
want to do
yeah,
you want to talk about that a bit, about our little conversations?
I do. So we're a group of women. Some of us are older, younger, and like I'm 48 and going through the subject of menopause, and it really is a roller coaster ride. And there's many positive aspects, but the kind of access to joy as I knew it when I was young, it was about going out and to festivals and party and drink and be up all night. And suddenly it's like, wow, my body just doesn't want to do that anymore. And I feel like I'm functioning. My life is about being productive. And where are these small pockets of joy? And then you're a bit younger than me, and you were saying the same thing, like, yeah, where the hell is joy? I don't
Yeah,
know.
like what does that feel like? What is that? Because yeah, I guess we've all always been so focused on our spiritual practices, have been so disciplined. Um, Not only that, but I think life circumstances and all sorts of things came into play and come into play continuously. Um, but yeah, I think it's questioning that, because I have been questioning that for a while. It's like, I actually, when people would ask me like, what, how do you have fun? Or what's like, what makes you happy? And I was like, um, what, like, I mean, what is it actually like? If what can I say there? What is it happy again? And I think is it joy? Was I experiencing joy? Does going to Kundalini yoga every day, 5 times a day, bring me a lot of joy? I mean, I guess there's snippets of it. But yeah, I think we wanted to open up on the topic is like, what what is the difference between the happiness and the joy? Because is there a difference, And like, I think here they were saying about happiness being like a sort of a sugar rush, and it's like an emotional pop, which I think is what we connect joy to being when we think about back in the day, when we partied and did naughty stuff, and it was great fun, and you stay up all night and you have your McDonald's or whatever on the way home, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and everyone's had a great time, and we say that to be joy. But it's like getting, I think happiness is what we get from like external things, like winning, buying something, or getting a compliment, which hits the brain's like reward center, and that feels good, but it fades.
Mm.
So then, okay, great. So is that what joy is then?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I teach meditation, and I thought it would be great, instead of sometimes going for the more difficult emotions that people experience, and I want them to have kind of the tools to deal with, is to say, hey, why don't you come on your cushion to a moment of thinking of a joyful whatever. It could be music, it could be being in nature, whatever it is for each person. And where do you feel it within your body? And is it like a small spot, or is it something you feel in your entire body? Is it something that's outside of yourself? And it was a very interesting exploration. And I think this is part
Mm,
of our monasterio, is to say there is not one answer to this. It
yes,
has to be explored. And you were
it
also
must.
sharing, it
We must
must.
be on the quest of questioning.
We do. So you brought up something interesting, which I was like, okay. You said Brené Brown says that we require vulnerability in order to feel joy. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a topic that was brought up in the conversation we had with the ladies in the start, and how she describes that we are terrified of joy because it makes us feel vulnerable. And it's like, that's interesting. Why would joy, like, isn't that something that should just make us feel good? Um, yeah, and I think she talks about it being like something perhaps that we try and avoid because it's too much. Um, and our bodies try and our brains try to protect us from it. So in case the other, like she calls it, in case the other shoe drops, that we're protected now. So she calls vulnerability being the secret, of the birthplace of joy. Um,
How do you feel
yeah,
about that? Do you
I
do
mean, I
you
I think it's true. I mean, I feel there's a truth to it. Um, because vulnerability has a certain feeling in some ways, a letting. I think she also speaks about it here. It's like to drop the armor and stop trying to control the outcome.
Mm,
And that links us into the topic of sort of the presence.
mm.
But yeah, how do you feel about what we're talking about through Brené Brown and vulnerability?
I think I can connect to it more through the word of presence, but maybe presence is also a form of vulnerability. And when you don't kind of think ahead, like now we're having this conversation, what am I going to say next? But to actually sit with an openness to let it drop in, whatever you're saying to me. And is that a vulnerability? When I say, oh, I don't feel comfortable with this question, or joy, I don't know what that is. When you allow me to explore, or you have, I don't know, space, presence. Presence also means for me, like I'm not with half of myself solving a problem somewhere outside in the past, the future. And many of the times, even though I teach meditation, I find it is one of the hardest things when I'm in a downward spiral is to catch myself, bring myself to presence and see what's around me that could give me joy. It could be looking at a flower. It could be hearing birds sing, but it's not good enough, because my life should look different, better, and it's also a thing I wonder if we have an image of joy and then we look at the discrepancy between the two. And we're like, well, if I'm not there, I can't experience joy. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Or
about
we have an idea
exploring
of
it.
it happiness because that's what we've been sold. I saw a video on Instagram, actually, quite interestingly, of this little rat, and they were saying like, oh man, it was like a illustration, an animated sort of thing, and it was like showing this little rat like, and there's just happiness signs everywhere. Like the Coca-Cola says happiness, the Jack Daniel says happiness, like the car happiness. So he's just chasing happiness all the time. And it's like, there's happiness, happiness in a bottle. And he dives into this bottle and then he lands up on the street somewhere else. And then there's like this money that's flying around and he's trying to catch the money. And then he gets caught in like a mouse trap or like a rat trap. And then he's there being shown in the office and like happiness is. And I was like, so is it more an idea that we have set about what happiness is being sold to us, instead of taking that pause and having a mindful breath and just being here now, and training ourselves to be here now, to not let the mind take us away, because it will always try. I mean, not that that's its job. It's fine. It produces thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts, but it is another part of us that is able to observe this and move away by creating spaciousness, which is what I love when you said that. Is it like the spaciousness to just be an experience? Because I think joy, as we were saying, only lives in the present moment, and you need to be present for it to be shown. Yeah, otherwise you'll miss life and it'll pass you by,
I think also our body is a container to experience joy, as now having asked at my age, what brings you joy? And it could be like doing something with your hands, cooking a meal, and or making pottery, or going out into nature, digging your hands into the earth can bring you joy, or a piece of music. And I think also something you touched upon was like, do we feel joy as a quiet, subtle background? And if it's so noisy, we can't feel or hear it? Or is it something very big and loud and explosive? I don't know. How do you experience that part?
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's also like, I think I just wanted to touch on it, is like how everyone experiences it so differently, like you say. So there's no one way, and it's always being open to knowing that it looks different for everyone else. For me, joy has exposed itself in a very gentle and subtle way, but it's always followed by gratitude in some ways. There's a sense of gratitude that comes, and then joy is sort of like, what do you call those little flower, like plants that you blow on them? Dandelions or
Löwenzahn in German. Yeah,
Löwenzahn, the dandelion. And you
dandelion.
know, it's like, yeah, it's like gratitude is that stem, and then when you blow in it, it's like those little things that fly out. There's like, that's the joy that's just kind of like
Mm, mm.
that's how I feel it. Sarah, how do you feel it? How do you sense
I
joy?
I think definitely that gratitude kind of when you're talking, going back to vulnerability, yeah. And if we have our armor, there's kind of like a in front of us or our heart, or we're trying to disconnect from the body, from our emotions. And
Yes.
we're living a lot in our minds and our thoughts, and everything is virtual. You know, social media is virtual. We have 1,000 people on our Insta, but we're not in connection in our three-dimensional world. So if we come back to being open, to remove the
Mm.
armor, to feel vulnerable, then there's it's like a, what would be the word? It is a very soft space. It's very easy to be hurt in some way, but
Yes.
also it connects you to gratitude, because suddenly you feel like, hey, there's a person who, I don't know, brought me flowers, you know, and you can feel it, but only if you don't have the armor. So that
Yes.
gratitude builds in a way, like when we start to move from everything is negative, or look at how the world is, politics, climate, it makes you really heavy and depressed. And you're like, also coming up now, this question, are we allowing ourselves to feel joy when there's so much suffering going on?
Absolutely. I think it's a courageous act in some way to kind of go against the grain of moving into the, you know, into the, how do I say it? Like, if everyone is accustomed to being in the negative bias, it's easy to kind of always be like, oh, the world is crap, and we don't, no one has money, and everyone is at war, and we should be depressed, and we should not eat, and we shouldn't use water, and you know, we should actually just not have clothes or shoes, or because those people don't have it. And sure, like, there's definitely deep moments where I'm like, I shouldn't have any of this, you know, but it doesn't help anyone. And you know, I think that, to I'm trying to think now, because what's coming up for me is that courage is the fire that ignites the heart, let's say, right? Like, you need the fire to kind of start up the engine of the heart in some way, you know, like, that's how I'm picturing it. It's like, you need to build this courageous, which I feel like sits in like your solar plexus, no? And it's like this fire element that needs to move, and you need to stoke it, and okay, build up the power to then be able to drop the armor
Mm.
and breathe and be
Mhm.
present. And your heart's like, oh, okay, cool, we've got the life, we can be open. And I think it brings us to that topic of safety, if I may. I don't know why it's led me back into the topic, because I feel like it's such a layered thing. Like, how do you invite gratitude, how do you invite joy without feeling safe and secure, and how do you become courageous without the safety and the security?
I'm I guess in a way, of course, if I was now in a war zone, or like with a real whatever volcano breaking out, there is no time for gratitude because it's about survival. But I guess the question is, how much safety do you need? Because even in moments when you're not 100% safe, you can still sometimes have people that come up exactly to help you, you know,
Mm.
in those moments of real vulnerability, of being unsafe. You require, you know, normally we're so self-sufficient, we have our phones now, we don't even ask for directions as we used to do. You know, we were in touch with people. Now we have our devices that do everything for us. We have AI to answer questions. You know, why
Yeah,
need a
yeah.
therapist or a friend when you can chit chat
Can
to
have
AI?
all night long without disturbing them or feeling guilty about it, right? But that's not
Totally.
connection. That's not connection. And I think that's also what I mean, we come back to Brené Brown a lot at the moment, but I think it would be nice to touch base on, I know, your views and your experience through Buddhism. Um, I forgot what I was going to say previously, so maybe we could just move on to the Buddhist, because that's taken on a whole different energy now all of a sudden. So let's move into that.
Well, one of the perspectives, and Buddhism has a huge amount of schools within, and I talk about calm abiding. So calm abiding has 9 stages, and it would require like proper discipline, but it's stabilizing your mind in a way that you're not the monkey mind's constantly going with every thought, every noise, everything you smell is jumping all the time.
Right, 'cause
You
it's so
become
easy.
It is easy. I
It
think
just
that
happens.
the image is an elephant with a monkey on it, and they change color, so to speak, the higher they come to show the progress. Point is that our mind is like a zoo. It's uncultivated.
Absolutely.
When we
Jeez.
cultivate it, we come to this place where we feel inside, we come out of a cognitive, through the
Yeah.
senses, because we sat in silence. There is this joy that comes by an undisturbed mind. That's also a view. That doesn't have to be people's access to joy. But I think what happens is, the outside world takes place. There's going to be good, bad, and it always disturbs. It's always disturbing your kind of stable, clear mind. So if we access this space within us, we can observe the outside as whatever it's doing without it constantly pulling you. Like I always imagine
Sarah.
a washing machine where you're like instantly going around in the chaos. So
Absolutely. Something just popped up, and I think it's a topic we spoke about quite a few times ago. How we need to drop in. You talk about it often as well, like dropping in from the mind down into the body, like an elevator that you continuously need to drop into. And when you were speaking about the calm, clear mind, it made me think about how, so often the external, the senses, everything that's going on, we're so pulled up into our minds, and we don't know how to drop back in. And it's a continuous practice of dropping back into, I don't know, for me, it's always been the heart space. I try to resonate with other spaces, but the heart space seems to speak to me. And that's where I have to feel my heartbeat before I even feel a breath to come back into the moment. For example, like that's like that beat just brings me back into that moment. And all of a sudden, there is a presence and there's a calmness just for a split second. And then it comes back up again. Yeah, it's interesting how, the practice of continuously working on that and just dropping back down in, and how, just that 1% every single day, 100 days later, maybe it's 100%, and there you are, your mind is going, and all of a sudden you're back in your heart, and I think that's the idea, is that maybe you don't have to go to the extremes of doing the calm abiding yeah practices necessarily, but just kind of doing that one little nugget of it, right?
Yeah. I think any spiritual path, just, first of all, is recognizing it's a path.
It's a path.
Yeah. It's not
it's a
like
journey.
It's a journey, and you want to have a guide who is experienced. So you want to have somebody, like, let's say you're going to Rome, for argument's sake, by foot. You want somebody who's been there and who knows how the terrain is from wherever you're coming, and who understands where you're at and can explain, you're going to come to these crossroads, and if you go to the left, it will be this way, and if you go to the right, it will be that way. And I mean, now we're swearing a little bit away from the subject of joy, but we're coming to the Monastereo part of really, like, having had moments of walking with a more disciplined way through our spirituality, but then maybe losing joy. Like we're like, where is it gone? Now we're so serious about our practice. But when we see like Buddhist monks or people that are spiritual on a spiritual path, they're very light and joyous
Mm,
and like
mm,
easy to smile. And,
mm.
maybe joy comes when we're less attached to our ego, or we're more humble, or we're content with what we have, so joy can have so many, I don't know, avenues to it. And I think through
Like
this.
layers as well. It sounds like there's like continuous layers that kind of, need to be worked through, that you experience joy in different ways. Like perhaps eventually when you've worked through those layers, it's kind of like this ember that kind of sits there, and then it's just who you are. And it's this sense of wholeness, always working from, I'm never lacking, I'm actually always been whole, and here I am, all these other layers. And I think the kleshas, no, from Buddhism.
Mhm.
And we have so
Do you want to
many of these.
explain what they are so the people that are listening? I'm just going to throw
Maybe
in
you
another.
explain it, Sarah.
Glaciers, and I love this other term that's called the reptiles. These are parts of us that ultimately cause us suffering in a way. When we're lying, stealing, killing, those are like but pride and um, I don't want to go into it too deep, but these aspects of ourselves that when we really sit down in meditation, we have this honest, like, why am I suffering here? Oh, that person really, put me down. Okay, so it's an ego thing. So am I really suffering? Or if I'm humble, like, why am I letting this person disturb me through what they're saying? So, I mean, this is what we do when we sit down. So coming back, you can continue. The kleshas are things that we look at, or the reptiles that really are a hindrance on our spiritual path.
Yes, yeah. And I think it is, when again, touching base is that behind all of that, we're whole, and I wanted to touch on that because I've also been playing with kind of finding acceptance with that, instead of trying to be like, no, no, I'm not whole, I need to complete myself more with more things and more practices and deeper practices and better food, and oh, there must be more, there must be more. And it's like, well, what if I'm already whole and everything I do is from a space of wholeness, from the space of fullness that I resonate with? Is that, that touching of perhaps where joy lies, but you can touch it and you can see it, but there is layers around it that you're like, oh, I see you, and like we're there, and like, but what is this? And it's like, oh, there we go, desire takes us all the way down to, I don't know, having a couple of cupcakes where then you feel like you're brain fogged, you have no energy, you're lying on the couch, your friend, your boyfriend, your mother comes in, and all of a sudden you're irritated, you're angry, and then you lash out at them. And there it all goes, right? And then you've been doing your practices for who knows how long, and all of a sudden you've just lashed out of desire, like you went down that way, and then you come back with a lot of compassion, right? And I think that's another thing. That's a whole nother topic of being compassionate towards ourselves, to come back into the practice and seeing that you're allowed to feel joyful. It's inside of you, it's inherent within you, as if, and you can't touch it. I think. I mean, I don't know. This is my experience at the moment.
Well, I think it is important for anyone who's listening, to this podcast of joy, is to come and really ask yourself of anything we touched on, or even your own experience that we haven't touched on, is to ask, what brings you joy? What do
Yes.
you need? Where do you feel your joy? Yeah. Do you think it is something you need to earn, or something you need to be allowed to feel? Like, let's say somebody in your family is suffering, has illness. So you're like, oh, I'm not meant to be feeling joyous, or many people in the world are suffering. And there is no right or wrong. This is important. I always feel we forget there is no right or wrong. I think it's more this honest naming. Where am I? Whoever you are,
And
Yeah,
exploration with curiosity, right? Yeah.
it is. And I think so, like, this is where we want to go with this podcast. And we've come
Yeah.
up to our half an hour. I think this is a good amount for people to listen to. And I want to say it's so great to have you, Monika. I really enjoy it being an exchange now and listening to your thoughts about it. And it gives me food for thought. So we will close this podcast. You want to say any
Awesome.
closing words?
Yeah, I'm just so glad that after, I think it's been 2 years, might be 3 years, we finally come to the space where, we're recording this. And yeah, I hope it can offer some form of contemplation for anyone who's listening. Um, Other than that, I mean, it brings me great, great joy to be able to speak to you at any point, Sarah. So having 30 minutes is a blessing.
Oh, same here, same here. So if you enjoy listening to Monasterio, please sign in. We're on Spotify and Apple and so on, the usual. And it would be great if you have any contributions or questions, reach out to us. And we will see you next time for episode 4. We have not decided on the theme, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye.